So, I'm still not getting my hopes up yet. I'm still going to be wary of this team. Who am I kidding? I'm definitely getting my hopes up about these guys because this is a completely different looking team than what we have seen. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of the issues are still there, namely with the three-point shooting. Bulls were 8 for 30 tonight shooting from deep, and really their offense in general still needs work, but the mentality with this group, the effort, the energy is different. It's clearly shifted from what we saw before the All-Star break. And as I said in the last post-game video, there is a newfound sense of urgency, something Billy Donovan had called for from this team. Again, I still need to see this consistently before I'm going to say that this team has truly turned a corner, but this is a very encouraging sign in the right direction, especially when you talk about the kind of performance they put on in the fourth quarter relative to some of the collapses we have seen in the fourth, outscoring the Wizards 28-15. By the way, I know this is coming out a little bit late, this post-game video, given the fact that I am with my family right now, and so I'm recording this in the evening, whereas usually I try to get these out right after the game. But anyway, there is something to be said about this team not getting in the mindset of the here we go again outlook when a team starts scrapping and fighting their way back into the game. Rather, now you're seeing the Bulls pushing the pace, keeping up the energy, taking care of business and closing out games. And you're talking about important games where you pick up a full game on a team that is right in front of you in the standings. The Bulls are still 11th in the East even after these two most recent wins, but now they're only a half game back behind the Wizards after this win, and a game and a half behind the Raptors as they did lose tonight. So the Bulls play the Raptors next, so another big game, but let's talk about tonight and how the Bulls came away with a blowout win. Wasn't pretty in the first half. Bulls committed a lot of turnovers. Their defense was solid in the first half, but the Bulls couldn't hit their shots, weren't making the right passes, forcing shots at times. You were seeing some silly fouls, actually a lot of fouls on Patrick Beverley, who didn't have a single point tonight, but was still impactful on the defensive end. But then, the second half, completely different story. Bulls were more focused, they were moving the ball around better, playing nicely in transition, better shot selection, and even though the Bulls really commanded the momentum throughout the third quarter, they took over when it mattered during the game in a blowout in the fourth quarter, holding the Wizards to only 82 points for the entire game. This coming off holding the Nets to 87 points the game before. It's pretty crazy to think that the Bulls actually have the #1 defensive rating in the league since January 1st. Given the struggles they've had as a whole throughout the season, and with tonight's performance, they've actually moved up to 6th in the league in defensive rating. It really speaks volumes to the fact that they have been really the biggest challenge for this team all season is their overall offensive system. Bulls also held the Wizards to 42% from the field, yet again, another game in which they held their opponent to shooting less than 25% from three. Perimeter defense has really improved with the addition of Patrick Beverley, especially in closing out the game. Having Caruso and Beverley close out games together kind of reminds me of last season when AC and Ball were closing out games. Bulls also forced 16 turnovers, while only giving up 8 turnovers of their own, which most of that was in the first half. Bulls were really buttoned up and taking care of the ball in the second half. Bulls were really buttoned up and taking care of the ball in the second half. Bulls still can't shoot the 3-ball to save their life. Went 8 for 30, as I mentioned, from deep, but luckily their perimeter defense made up for it on the other end. Also helped that they were very efficient inside, shooting 50% overall from the field. Zach LaVine has really been on point so far since the All-Star break. Very efficient. The other night, 12 for 17. Tonight, 11 for 18. 2 for 4 from 3. Much more choosy with his shot selection. I love seeing him play more off the ball and limiting his turnovers as well. He's also passed Derrick Rose for 10th on the Bulls' all-time scoring list. Big congrats to Zach on that. Tonight, he puts in another 27 points to add to that and just a couple hundred points away from passing Reggie Theus for 9th on the list. Big game from Zach, especially when you consider some of the big shots he hit in the fourth quarter to really put the Bulls over the top in securing the win. I do also like seeing the fact that we're seeing more offense being run through Zach LaVine a bit more. Don't get me wrong, DeMar still got his. In fact, he actually had more points than Zach did overall, but he's been deferring more, not putting up as many shots. Only took 15 shots tonight on 11 for 15 shooting. Love seeing DeMar getting those assist numbers up and not focusing on playing heavy isolation ball. I said last season after Lonzo went down, for the Bulls, without a true point guard in the lineup, we really need to see that point forward role that DeMar had when he was with the Spurs, averaging over 7 assists per game, putting up over 20 points per game. The Bulls need a floor general and facilitator, which I'm not saying that's what DeRozan is, but he can be the closest thing to that for this team, especially now knowing Lonzo's being shut down for the season. So I hope we see more of this from DeMar, being much more selective about the shots that he takes, deferring more to others, and obviously still being the great scorer that he is, but maybe not needing to take 22 to 24 shot attempts a night. Vucevic, a solid game, although he continues to struggle with that outside shot, going 0 for 6 from 3 inside though. So efficient. He was 7 for 10 inside the three-point line though, 16 points, 13 rebounds, 0 turnovers. Would have hoped the Bulls would have exploited and taken advantage of the fact that Porzingis was out for this game. Although, shout out to my guy Daniel Gafford, who I still wish the Bulls had never traded for. He's still a beast in the paint, and it's hard going up against him regardless of KP being out. Quieter games from Patrick Williams and Dosunmu compared to the other night. Ayo, 22 minutes, 0 points, 0 for 6, 0 for 4 from 3. Ayo's 3-ball is really fallen off compared to what we saw last season, where it seemed like he just hit them all the time. Didn't take many, but shot them at a good clip. This season, just hasn't been there for him, shooting 32% from 3. And then for Patrick, just 5 points, wasn't as aggressive on offense like we saw the other night, but he did play very well on defense against guys like Kuzma, who really struggled, and Denny Avdija. Big game for Coby White. The world wouldn't be right if we didn't see a game in which Coby plays terribly in the last outing on poor shooting to follow that up, going 6 for 8, 3 for 5 from 3, 17 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists. Mr. Inconsistency himself strikes again. What I would give to just have this guy play well on a consistent basis for the Bulls, just coming off the bench. I'm not saying he needs to be a star player, but just a consistent role player, that scoring spark that we need for him to be coming off the bench. But we can only ask for so much, right? At least he's putting up some good games and not just putting up all terrible games. Anyway, hoping the Bulls can keep these wins coming. They'll be back at it against the Raptors on Tuesday in Toronto. I'll be traveling back home tomorrow. I know the last few days have been light on the content, both here as well as on the NBA channel. But in the meantime, as always, be sure to subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next one.